everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the TRB In-Lap podcast. It's episode 6. I think it's episode 6. Counting up on my hands quickly then. Yes, episode 6 of the podcast, and we are, of course, talking about round 3 of the 2021 WEC season. It was the 6 hours of Monza. Incredibly enough, the first 6 hours of Monza in the WEC era. And once again, I am joined by podcast pal and receptionist who is yet to be let go from his position at the TRB headquarters, Michael Haffenden. Michael, first of all, how are you doing? How's work going? And quick thought on the race.
I'm doing well. I'm slightly overheating right now, as is most of the UK. The job, you mean the secretary role, which I started in the last episode?
Not quite secretary yet. It's really just a basic admin reception job. Sorry.
Well, I've got to have goals, haven't I? So I'll work my way up to the.
I like aspiration. You're promoted. I like aspiration. You're promoted.
He's made it. Where do I go from here? It's been great. Really enjoying it.
And the race?
The race. Oh, we want to talk about the race. WEC at Monza. What's not to like? I absolutely loved it. I didn't. Unfortunately, it was probably the most dramatic Grand Prix incident we've seen in about over a decade. So I was slightly sidetracked with having to cover that and the internet exploding off the back of that. But I was also cheekily keeping an eye on the stream while that was going on. But don't tell anyone that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch the whole thing back yet, but I am working my way through it. And I have obviously caught up on what happened because WEC at Monza, as I say, what's not to like, and long overdue that the series is there, I think.
And to compound you saying that you weren't able to watch all of it, it was, of course, my birthday. And I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone, TRB followers, who wished me a happy birthday. I had a great day. It was exceptionally hot here in the UK, which is something that all British people have to mention because we somewhat fall apart when the temperature suddenly switches up a bit. So I myself was enjoying the sun, so potentially dropping in and out of the race, but able to keep across the key storylines. So let's dive straight into things. And of course, the TRB In-Lap podcast is presented by Racing Edge, our long-standing partners. Great to see they're still on board, and also great to see the team getting out and about and doing some pretty cool things. So make sure you go and follow their Instagram, Racing Edge Official, and you can see them getting out and about testing motorbikes recently. I saw them grabbing some serious airtime in some off-road motorbikes, so they're having a good time. But as part of that, we like to discuss what's going on the Racing Edge paddock. Now, Racing Edge sell race cars, road cars, track day cars, anything you want, and everything you could possibly want. And Michael and myself, we like to set a little challenge and pick a car to a certain theme, and we've gone simple this week. It being in Monza, Italy, the theme is to just basically pick an Italian car that's for sale on the Racing Edge paddock, and we're going to tell you what we've picked, and it's up to you guys to pick a winner. So just comment below which one you think is best. I went first last time, Michael, so it's your go to go first this time. What Italian car have you picked from the Racing Edge paddock?
It's just going to sound like I've copped out and gone for a Ferrari because Italian car, Ferrari, we're talking about Monza. But genuinely, the 308 GTB is one of my favourite looking Ferraris of all time. And that is what I've gone for, the 1976 model. Because, first of all, absolutely stunning car. Secondly, a Ferrari at Monza. Thirdly, I don't know whether it's just this heat, but I'm not really in the mood for absolutely thrashing something around. I kind of feeling it, just appreciating the circuit. Monza's got a beautiful setting, really, really pretty circuit, and then an equally pretty car. I think I just fancy a bit of a grand tour around Monza rather than absolutely hammering it out for lap time. I think, the smell of that car, the sound of that car, the look of that car at Monza, it's doing things to me.
Sensory perfection is the term I'd like to use. Well, my pick, I've gone for a similar vein, but this one really stood out to me. It's a 1986 Alfa Romeo Spider Graduate. It's a slightly different edition, but again, the small little Alpha, top down, cruising through Milan, the city streets. You've just stopped off for a pizza, and things like that just screamed yes at me. And the thing that really drew my attention was the price. It's currently listed for just below 15,000 US dollars, which I think is an absolute steal for what it is. So those are our picks from Michael and myself. Let us know which one you prefer, or why not go over to the Racing Edge paddock at racingedge.com and see what Italian car you might pick from the options there. And
Yeah, and try and get to the Alpha before me and Tim do, because we'll be rushing through this podcast just to
the
buy that, I
bidding
think.
war has already commenced. Uh, but yes, of course. And more importantly, if you are in the market for a race, road, or track car, please head over to racingedge.com. So let's kick things off then. We're going to do our usual climb up the classes in the WEC grid. And actually, before we get started, I'd just like to give a shout out to TRB associated driver Charlie Robertson, who took his first stab at commentary duties at the weekend. He joined the Eurosport team on the coverage of the 6 hours of Monza, and he looked to be having a lot of fun. So congratulations, Charlie, on having a good race, although it was probably a different experience being behind the mic as opposed to being out there on track. And who knows, hopefully we can get Charlie on the podcast sometime in the future. It'd be really cool to speak to him. Of course, a driver with Le Mans experience. So let's see if we can drag him into TRBHQ for a chat. But GTEAM, I felt, again, we had the classic GTEAM race, didn't we? Contenders throughout the field. We had trials and tribulations. It was a perfect Italian opera, wasn't it? We had plenty of loud voices singing, plenty of drama. But once again, the 83AF Corsa Ferrari coming out on top, heading home that battle, the top one battle in 2021, if you follow the WEC Instagram. The 98 Aston Martin Racing, the Northwest car, and the 777D Station Racing team. Great to see those guys getting on the podium in GTM. But Haf, your thoughts? What a race once again. Plenty of GTEs going at it, and in a class with different drivers, different names. Great to see.
Yeah, fantastic again from GTM. I think we're seeing a battle between GTD and GTDM for who can, I don't know how to phrase this, who makes me wonder where to look the most, which class, because at the start of every race, either in GTM this season or in GTD, I'm just like jaw on the floor, like, oh my God,
That is
is
an official
everything okay?
TRB. That's an official TRB award, by the way. The
It's jaw
don't
on the
know which
floor
one to
award.
look at more award, but yeah.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, it was quite a clean start, wasn't it? I was kind of worried going into it. I know they split the prototypes and the GTs up, but that didn't do much at Portimao, and we saw quite a chaotic start there. So I was thinking, you've made it through the infamous first chicane. You've made it through the majority of the first lap. Oh no, they're 3 wide in GTM into Parabolica on the first lap. There it is. There's the carnage that we're used to. Um, but yeah, not too much in the way of car on car carnage. So that's what we like to see. Yeah, some fantastic battles at the start. It reminded me a bit of Spa, where we had lots of movers and shapers coming up the
Mm.
field, people who started at the back, progressing through, like you mentioned, obviously the 83 Ferrari, who I am actually going to award my team of the race, in
We need a
terms of,
siren. We need a siren. We need something to go woo 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 play in the
you put
background.
a lot of pressure on yourself to edit one in now. So
Yeah. if
unlucky, mate.
if right, just for clarity, obviously, those listening, I go back and edit this. Okay, so if you have heard a siren sound, I have found the time to put one in. And if there isn't one, then I haven't found the time to put one in. So just bear that in mind. Okay. Anyway,
Look at
continue
him
on.
already covering himself off, just in case. Obviously, having to start from the back of that class, and we saw a fight back right from the first stint from Alessio Rivera. I just thought they got stuck in straight away and executed. And obviously, we didn't quite see, as I'm sure we'll come on to, the Ferrari GTE Pro glory at Monza. I thought it was appropriate that a car which had battled through after a bit of adversity earlier in the weekend should come through and take the win in Am. So yeah, that was great. And also the battle at the start of the race where we had Keating. I think it was Keating in the Aston. Then we had the 54 and the 83 Ferraris just going hammer and tong every lap with traffic coming through as well. I really enjoyed that sort of early. It was about half an hour or so into the race. Just really enjoyed those early battles. Just loving GTM this year. I really am. And it's the same, like I said earlier, with GTD. We're very much enjoying the Pro Am classes this season.
Yeah, I think it really offers something, doesn't it? Because I think that start was a perfect example of the skill levels that are present in GTM, because Rivera is a young driver, but he's kind of a sneaky rated driver. I believe he's silver rated, but he's a pretty strong, sneaky young upstart silver. And their car was forced to start at the back of the grid. And in that first stint, they put Alessio Rivera in, whilst the other teams had their AM driver, if you like, the gentleman driver who qualifies the car and therefore has to start the car. Typically, they're doing that to try and get their driver time out of the way so they can hand over to the higher rated drivers who can then, either haul the car back into position or hold the position, basically saving their best till last is the strategy. And we see that in GTD for comparison. But to go from the back of the grid to right up the sharp end in the opening stint, if that opening half an hour, I think he was maybe fifth or sixth after the first lap. Just fantastic stuff. And I'd like to say that I had my crystal ball out post 6 hours of Spa earlier this year, and I said he's going to be one to watch. And I get the feeling that he's heard that and he's now doing exactly that, because what an opening stint from Rivera. But I think the real heartbreak for me was from the TF Sport car. I think, their pretty sizable puncture mid race, I think, stripped us of what could have been a very exciting battle. Whether that car would have won, I don't know, because I feel like the pace from the AF Corsa Ferrari was good. They were good on strategy, etc. But that would have been a really exciting fight at the front. And considering how close the fight was for second, what was ultimately second, we could have had probably a four-way fight for the race victory into the final hour or so. Ben Keating, who you and I, we sing his praises all the time, once again, putting in a really strong, what a weekend he had. Pole position in GTEM, a really strong pole position as well for the Texican. He had a time of 1:47.2, a whole 7/10 faster than P2, which was the Settler Racing at number 47 Ferrari. But look, Keating did a stellar job. Apart from, he admitted in the in-race interview, he just locked up too hard on the front right at some point in his opening stint, and he could feel the vibration getting worse. Front left, and it just so happened that it was one lap too far. He said he was driving 20 minutes trying to save that front left tire, and it just at the wrong place, wrong time, bang, tire let go. But that car was then knocked down the order result of them basically that dead tire just flailing and just absolutely decimating that front left corner. But I think had the TF Sport car escaped that, we would have been in for a cracking battle. And I feel that battle, AF Corsa 83, TF Sport 33, Aston Martin, and potentially the 47 Settler Racing Ferrari. I feel like those are the best three cars in the GTM class. And I think the champion is going to come from one of those three at the end of the year.
Oh, we can clip that, can't we, for when it does happen, and you can be like, I called it, like you did for the Spa winner, Spa 24 winner last season. Yeah, I completely agree. Real shame to see the 33 cars challenge end that way. We've seen similar things earlier in the year. Obviously, at Portimao, we saw lots of lockups from the D station car, followed by a big big puncher, not quite the same sort of catastrophic front end damage that completely wrecks a race. But yeah, I think Keating, from the sounds of that interview, he was very aware of the fact he'd locked up, which you probably would be. You'd know about it at Monza if you've got a flat spot, the vibrations uh, along the straights and into the braking zones. Um, but yeah, like you said, we had an amazing showdown on the final laps in for a second as well. So who knows if the Aston had been in there as well? It might have been a three-way fight. But yeah, shame we never really got to see that come to fruition. But I think it bodes well going into Le Mans that we've got some proven drivers and teams who are going to be up at the sharp end, but we've also got some new guys who are, proving their worth
Settler,
and
of course.
spicing it up.
The
Yeah,
Settler, of course. I
exactly.
mean, they're brand new to this category after slaving away with the Dallara. I bet they feel like they're reaping the rewards of their decision. Monza race, not great for them. Home turf, 3 Italian drivers in an Italian car, the Italian flag on at the first Italian round of the championship history. And that incident on the exit of the second Lesmo really cutting their race short and their challenge at the front. But yeah, I mean, they're doing a fantastic. I can't emphasize enough how great a job they're doing with what is a brand new car to them. But also, again, paying tribute to Ben Keating for. I think what really impresses me about him, you can tell he's a clever businessman. You can tell he's a great public speaker. But when he gets asked a difficult question about, you know, essentially what you've just done has ended your team's race, for want of a better way of putting it, he really handles that well. And it's so evident the way he just says, like this racing, I made a mistake. I did my best to drive around it, and I'm really sorry to the team. And instead of being the, gentleman driver, you could argue that it's just bringing the money and just wants to have a good time. And that's like getting too much of him. The way he deals with that, I think, speaks volumes of what kind of character Ben Keating is. Insert the whole section where we spoke about Ben Keating after the Spa 6 hours or the Daytona 24. Just drop
Tony
that
as
in.
well, yeah.
Yeah, just drop
Yeah.
that in here. And of course, if you are playing a TRB In-Lap drinking game, that does mean you have to take a drink because we did mention Ben Keating being good. Just to quickly cap off GTM, first time appearances for the 61 AF Corsa car, Christian Ulrich, Mann, and Tony Villander as well. Great to see another car joining the grid. I believe that's in preparation for a Le Mans entry, and also seeing the 46 Team Project 1 car of Olsen, Bouchard, and Root. That was great because those guys had a big incident at the prologue. Actually, it wasn't even at Spa for qualifying or in a race session, practice session. I believe it was an incident in the prologue with the P2, damaged the chassis. They couldn't get it repaired in time. So I've missed race 1. Then they haven't been able to source another chassis in time for Portimao. So here they are, first appearance of the season. It's race 3. Talk about throwing yourself in the deep end. But also, thank goodness they got a race in before showing up at the big one at Le Mans. Great to see those guys back out. And also great to see Dennis Olsen and Max Root in that car. Max Root is a name that I have seen in IMSA. I think I've seen him pop up in a couple of GTD cars. So excited to see how he gets on this side of the pond in Europe in a GTE machine. And of course, the 388 Rinaldi Racing car of Eret Hook and Bleekemolen. Of course, Jerome Bleekemolen can't stay away from Le Mans. He has to race at every Le Mans. Although it's interesting that the commentary team pointed out this will be the first time that Ben Keating hasn't raced with Jerome Bleekemolen in the same car. So Keating going it alone this year, and the happy marriage has they're spending some time apart, shall we say? Who knows?
Oh,
Well, let's wrap up GTM there, and let's move on to the Premier GT class, which is GTE Pro. Look, okay, it's not healthy viewing to see only 4 cars taking to Monza, but this is the GTE Pro world we live in at the moment. It's at least it's one more car than your average sprint race in IMSA in the respective category. So Let's not take it for granted. But the main storyline here is, and I tweeted this post race, Porsche winning is as close as you can get to an away day victory in racing as is possible. I mean, to come to a circuit that is it literally is made of Ferrari. It's surprising that the asphalt itself isn't red, uh, and to perform that well, being that convincing throughout the entire race, to be able to hold off Ferrari, to be able to attack. I mean, we were previewing this race and we were talking about BOP, and even in my 5 things to watch post that I put out before the race, I was expecting, in all honesty, the AF Corsa Pro cars to be fairly unbeatable, but just pays tribute to Kevin Estre and Neil Yarni once again winning, once again proving that as a duo they're a really really solid lineup.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, isn't it? Because like you say, I think we're now getting used to the fact that race by race we've only got 4 cars in that category. But to me, it really wasn't an issue at all at Monza. I think we had a fantastic battle for the duration. And also, just a quick side note, those those cars. I know we're late into the GTE era now, and we've had its peak, and this is not a time where we're celebrating huge amounts of manufacturers in the category, but we still obviously got the great racing. But what I want to say is, I think both of those cars have now got the sweetest liveries they've ever had on them. The sweetest factory liveries. The slow
Yes.
mos of those cars curb hopping at Ascari is genuinely, Graham Goodwin said it best at the time, poetry in motion.
Mm.
Absolutely clarting the curbs, throwing the cars over the curbs through Ascari at Monza. Beautifully red Ferrari followed by um, very clean white Porsche. Just something about that made me very. I was genuinely smiling at my screen watching that
I
live.
think
Like
we all
this,
were.
this is this is great.
You can't not. The only thing that would have made it slightly better, there's the only possible way it could have been better, and I know the shot you're referring to is if it was at dusk and you got a bit of glowing
Oh
glowing brake disc in there and a bit of headlight flare. That would have really
yeah.
just pepperoni on the pizza. It's the
No, I
Italian.
know what I'm thinking about before I fall asleep tonight. That'll be flashing through my mind. Um, not the pizza, the
Oh,
cars.
oh,
Um,
okay. Reduced grid. We know what's going on. We know where we're at with GT Pro. Yeah, it still is a battle worth winning. Look, let's be honest. If Porsche and Ferrari were like, "Oh, no one's doing this. We don't want to race. See ya." They're still here. They're still pretty much beating the living daylights out of each other. And one of my particular favorite points was clearly one of the Porsches. I can't quite remember if it was the 91 or 92, had been fuel saving behind one of the Ferraris. And just the call over the radio, which was saying, do you reckon you can get past whoever it was that was driving, which I think at the time, I think it was Jimmy Bruni, obviously Italian as well. So it's quite cool to see him driving at his home race. He was asked, do you think you can get past the Ferrari? He said, well, I think I can give it a good go. Engineer says, you've got 5 laps to do it, no fuel save. And like that, just like, oh, go for it, give it everything. Like, it's so exciting to see these drivers are still giving absolutely everything. They are fighting tooth and nail for these victories as if, all of them are potentially not going to race the next week or something like that. It's got that die-hard feeling to it. And building that is Neil Yarni. I feel like he's really starting to develop. Okay, he had one mistake where he sent a move late on his teammate, went in deep at the second chicane and had to kind of back out of it and sort himself out. But for a driver that's used to prototype stuff and has only done this is his 4th race in the RSR 19, if you include the 2020 Sebring 12 hours, he's complementing Kevin Estre in the right ways and in the right places. And I feel like as a team, they're two very good. Their characters match. We talk. You only have to watch Truth in 24 and listen to Alan McNish talking about how Dr. Ulrich was amazing at reading characters and going, this driver needs this because he's like this and this person's like this. You get the feeling that Kevin Estre's does all his talking on the racetrack, but there's something about the character with Neil Yarni who I feel is quite methodical and is rapid and wants to learn and will listen. That they're matching each other. I mean, what a lineup! I'm really excited to see how this car goes at Le Mans. It's going to be a whole different experience for Yarni, but I think he can really start patting himself on the back. I mean, we said this at Spa, didn't we? I know you were quite strong in saying it, Half, that for a first go in WEC racing in a GT Pro car, he did a great job. And now, only 2 races later, he's picking up another win in class and complimenting Kevin Estre fantastically.
Yeah, I think you put it best there. He's doing exactly what he needs to do, and he's complementing one of the best, if not the best, GT driver in the world right now. Um, that's what he needs to be doing. He doesn't need to be setting the timing screens alight or doing the fastest average lap times of the class every time he steps into the car. He needs to be making the right calls in traffic and, like you say, complimenting Esther in that car. She's doing perfectly. And what we saw, I was slightly worried going into the race that we'd see the typical trait of Porsche strong on Saturday, Ferrari far stronger on Sunday, and we saw that in Portimao where it basically wasn't really a race after the first stint. Um, and certainly Porsches are they were still wary at Monza of tyre wear, but obviously Monza are a much less abrasive surface than Portimao, which is notoriously a bit of a tyre killer. And yes, there was a 30-second gap at the flag, but that doesn't really do justice. It's like a football or a tennis scoreline not doing justice to actually how close the match was or the games were. They were locked in battle the full way through that. And I think Yanni said that they were actually quite grateful at the Porsche camp for having a bit of cloud cover in as they got into the race, because at the start of the race they felt like Ferrari were very strong when the sun was shining and the track temps were higher, and then the cloud cover came. And I read an interview of Yanni saying that the left rear was basically saved by that cloud cover. Um, I like to think me and you have some experience of that, with the iron clouds they have on iRacing, where we can go like 30 mile an hour quicker through the Porsche curves whenever it's cloudy on a lap.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting, and that's the stuff we love in endurance racing, isn't it? Those changeable conditions and those dynamic factors having an outcome on the race. That's what we love to see.
Well, let's extrapolate that great use of that word, I might say, uh, and apply it to Le Mans, a 24-hour race, day, night, 2 very different sets of conditions in the final week of August, where it could potentially be baking. I mean, we're in a current little mini heat wave here in Europe, and there's another one expected around that time, I believe. We could have a race where Ferrari just walk away from Porsche with ease in the first 8 hours, and then overnight Porsche bring that gap back and then add some more onto their lead. And then they've got to hold on to it through till 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. And that's before we even factor in the 2 IMSA Corvettes that are obviously racing at Le Mans for the first time this year, having missed out last year. So another potential direction for the performance pendulum to swing. Seeing these cars, how they work in different ways, different conditions, different strengths, different weaknesses. I mean, the Porsche was great on traction out of the chicanes at Monza, but definitely still didn't quite have the legs on the Ferraris, which we've been saying all season. I mean, at Le Mans, this is just, I mean, you couldn't balance these 2 cars better, I don't think. So I think we're in for a proper head to head at Le Mans. I really hope that we don't, we get all 4 cars through the night and through into Sunday, because I think it'd be a real shame if we lost a car or 2, because it's not like it's a couple of contenders, it's half the field. Okay, well, half the field. I mean, we've got a great GTE Pro field this year with Hub Auto Racing, stepping up from GTE, and we've also got the WeatherTech Porsche as well, and the 2 Corvettes like I've mentioned. But really hope we get these cars through. But yeah, and I think we could probably go on now hour after hour heaping praise on Kevin Estre, couldn't we? But
We could, yeah,
Again,
and
another
well
win.
deserved as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking high temperatures at Le Mans springing surprises, we only need to look back to 2017 when we saw LMP2 cars on the podium. And what class are we covering next? And what class was on the overall podium, Tim? That's a segue for
Oh,
you, my friend.
yeah. I mean, you rode that segue well, my friend.
Thank you.
Great job. Incredible. I
Appreciate it.
would clap, but I just don't want to. LMP2 class. We're nearly there. We're into category 3 of 4. United Autosports back on the top step of the podium, but also on the third step of the overall podium. Important to add, uh, their first time, I believe, on the overall podium. Phil Hansen, Fabio Scherer, and Felipe Albuquerque getting it done once again in the number 22, leading home the 31 Team WRT car of Robin Freintz, Ferdinand Habsburg, and Charles Milesi. Then Racing Team Netherlands on the podium. I mean, that's impressive considering that they had to make 2 substitutions pre-race as a result of positive COVID tests. Nick de Vries in the car and Paul-Luc Chatin getting in, doing what they needed to do on a call up. Fantastic stuff from them, and I think they really deserve that podium. Look, yeah, let's just talk about that. We saw hypercars having a bit of a difficult race, but once again, LMP2 cars were solid at Monza. I think, like you say, we are in for a very close, potentially close event should things fall the way of an LMP2 car. I still think that even after Monza, where the gap between the two classes was, I feel, the biggest it's been all season. This Oracle 07 is just solid, isn't it? You can't really fault it. It's probably one of the best sports cars the last 10 years. Reality, let's be honest, it is, isn't it? It is a fantastic prototype. And to see the level of competition, the standard, I think is the word I'm looking for, that we've got now in WEC, the driver standard as well. I mean, the guys in these cars are effectively all pro lineups. They're not really because they can't be in LMP2, but they effectively are, aren't they? I mean, you look at Freintz, Habsburg, and Malaysia, and that just sounds like an all pro lineup, doesn't it? Robin Freintz, Audi driver, Habsburg, been an Audi driver in DTM, etc. Malaysia, who's been proving his value in GT3 Audi machinery, I believe, as well. So can't get better than that. And we're in for a stellar race, I think, in LMP2 when we roll around to Le Mans.
Yeah, I think we got a preview of it at Monza, didn't we? We saw, especially early on, some great battles, and again, the difference is the strategy, sort of long game played by some of the AMs starting, and it was just great to see again. And I'm so excited to see what that class can do at Le Mans. It's going to be interesting because one of the main, I think, appeals over the last few seasons with, well, since this generation of P2 came in 2017, has been just how much of a rocket ship those cars are at Le Mans. Um, Obviously, we know they've been pegged back a bit for this season, so we won't see the overall lap times that we've seen previously, but it hasn't affected the wheel-to-wheel racing so far this season, and that's the main thing. I know we are chatting about that in a previous episode about lower speeds in the top category. We don't mind, and as long as it's still the racing's still close. And they've got a fantastic chance, probably the best chance since 2017, if not definitely in the last decade, of getting onto the overall podium. And dare I say it, winning Le Mans. I will come out and say that we saw issues for both Toyotas. I'm surprised we haven't seen issues like that sooner, to be honest. Obviously, we had one of the Toyotas having a brake issue at Spa,
Which we'll get onto all of
and
this in the next one.
we will do. And we saw one of them stopping out on track at Spa as well. I can't remember which number that was. So we have seen a couple issues here and there, but nothing on the level that we saw at Monza. And it must be encouraging for the P2 teams to think we've seen in the past we can take advantage and nearly win overall if the top class falters. This is a completely new set of regulations, and yes, we've got a grandfathered LMP1 in there which should run reliably, but it's just a one of those. So
We're not far off, are we? That's what that's definitely what they're
exactly.
saying. We're not that far off. And yeah, like you say, the race was really decided by strategy, unfortunately, with the safety car that followed on from TF Sports puncture. Basically, some of the field pitted just as it happened, and it kind of worked perfectly. Others kind of got caught out by being stuck out on track, had to pit and then for emergency service and come back in again. I think the WRT car was really quick this weekend. Malaysia obviously getting pole position. WRT's first pole in WEC racing as well, which is a big tick off the to-do list for that team, who have been pretty much the team to beat the benchmark in ELMS racing at the moment. And to see them, get what they deserve, I feel, in WEC was really cool. But the level of competition is just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, you only had to see how hard Alex Brundle was pushing in his stint in the number 34 into Europol car. I mean, Brundle's a driver who has done a lot of sports car stuff. He races classic cars. He's been racing prototypes for a while now. He's a exceptionally well-rounded driver. He knows when to push, when to hold back, when to make a move, when to take his time in traffic. He's got that ability. We only had to see it last year in the United Autosports car at Le Mans, pushing flat out in the night and driving, probably putting in the stint of that team's race in the 32 car. But to see him basically sending one on his competitor, I think it was the ARC Bratislava car, into the first chicane, because he just, I need to get past. I just need to do it. I need to go now. I need to make the move. Almost that rushed element. You start thinking, wow, he's actually really having to try now. This isn't just a case of the cream rises to the top. This is the whole field's cream, basically. You heard it here first. Don't write that in the TRB press release.
Out of context In-Lap.
Yeah, someone start that Twitter page. Someone start out of context TRB. The whole LMP2 cast is cream. Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it? The stuff I come out with on this, crazy. We're only on episode 6, and I've become a meme without realizing. But anyway, look, disappointment of the race for me personally. Potentially, Jota. I thought they had such a strong Portimao race. Whatever they had there, I don't think carried on. We spoke about momentum in the previous podcast, about how they just had everything go their way at Portimao. And if they could continue that, teams were going to be scratching their heads by the time we get to Lasarth in August, but didn't really feature, in my opinion. P5 for Galeal, Van Dorn and Blomqvist. A lap down as well. Expect to see a bit more from those guys, in all honesty. And the number 38 car not classified, which is a bit of a shame as well to see them getting a DNF, but they'll come back fighting. And of course, Jota, half the team that I believe ran the P2s that got onto the podium overall in 2017. So
wow, it all the
it's all
circle
coming
of
together.
endurance racing
The
life
stars
come together.
The stars are aligning. The Venn diagram of Jota and LMP2's overall podium could be about to overlap again. Cool.
Cool.
So, final point in LMP2. Great to see the Ricci competency only car as well.
Yes, I was waiting to say this. Slightly confusing having the number 1 on the nose, because we've already, of course, got a number 1 LMP2, the Richard Mille racing entry.
Which on that car, Richard Mille, only 2 drivers this weekend in Calderon and Flörsch as well. So interesting to see those girls dealing with just having two drivers in the team over 6 hours, but doing a pretty strong job, finishing 8th overall. Sorry, 8th in class. Anyway, carry on. Ricci competency only.
I think that car looks fantastic as well. I really like it. I wasn't sure. I was a bit conflicted about the whole Ricci in P2 thing, because, as Martin Haven said in commentary, he's having to actively stop himself from saying Ferrari after he finished the word competency only, which is completely understandable because they're just so synonymous with running a Ferrari. But yeah, I think it's quite hard to get a red and yellow livery that works. Sometimes some teams get it very right, and it's quite easy to get it quite wrong. Speaking from just seeing lots of red and yellow liveries online in like iRacing lobbies, and it just hurting my eyes. But
Just say
it
for
looks
those
clean,
listening,
that car.
we are opening the door back into livery corner now as well. We're going back in to discuss liveries. It's always a pertinent topic on the TRB In-Lap, but like you say, well, on the topic of liveries, I believe it was Martin Haven said it would be strange to see Ricci Competizione only running anything other than a red car, but he forgets the blue 2019 Ferrari
Now that's a controversial livery, isn't it?
with the horse legs down the side. But
I quite liked it. I quite liked
you
it.
liked
You
it.
definitely didn't like it when we were trackside at Le Mans, which we were in 2019, by the way, and in 2018 and in 2017, and they were like the best weekends of our lives. Just to mention,
Cool.
that again, because we have to get it into every podcast.
Not holding on to it, but yeah, look, it's weird, isn't it? Rizzi running a P2. Am I hoping that it's because they want to run a hypercar Ferrari? Yes. Do I think that will happen? Don't know. And we're going to keep fingers, toes, and limbs crossed that it does happen. Absolutely. Will everyone else listening to this and Michael across this Zoom call? Yes, as well. We'll do. So, look, great to see them out there. Great to see the driver lineup as well. Cool to see Ollie Jarvis getting a run out in WEC with Ryan Cullen and Felipe Nasr. I mean, what a strong LMP2 lineup that is.
What I will say as well is we've seen this year in WEC the newcomers getting up to speed incredibly quickly. People like, I know D Station obviously have a bit of assistance in running the car, of course, but people like the Settelar Ferrari, which we always bang on about, people like WRT, who have, like you said, become the benchmark in ELMS pretty much so far this season, and could well have, they're in the running for the victory until a little bit of a strategy blunder, which I know Vance and Voss just said, look, we're new to this, we're still learning. And the thing with those two teams is it's easy to forget that they're new to it because they are so on the pace, and right up at the sharp end. So it's encouraging for Risi. Obviously, a well-established team with a great driver lineup. So I don't see any reason why they can't get up to speed and at least have a decent run at Le Mans, because we know in the last, certainly 2019 wasn't an easy run at all for them. They were just lacking pace entirely throughout the whole race week, really, of Le Mans. But yeah, this is a fresh start for them, and they've got obviously a strong team and a very strong driver lineup. And like I'm saying, they've seen other teams come into it who are fresh to the series, and they're already getting some cracking results.
I mean, nothing screams getting up to speed like qualifying P5 on debut, only 3/10 off, uh, WRT and United Autosports at the top of the class. So, yeah, it's really strong showing from Rizzi. And like we both say, exciting to see what these guys can do at Le Mans in around a month's time. Actually, I think this is exactly a month's time or so from now till Le Mans week anyway. So the countdown begins. Let's head on then to the final category of today's podcast. I think it's time. Maybe we just throw in our little sly comment, see if people have listened this far. And I feel like if you just comment below, I'll get your impression on this half. If they just comment below like their favorite pizza, I think it could be quite interesting because it's Italian.
Yeah,
Very
nice.
stereotypical, I know, but like I feel like if a comment section's filled with like margarita, or maybe people saying whether they think not pepperoni, pineapple should go on pizza.
Yeah,
I feel like this would
yeah,
be.
yeah. I mean, you
Let's
could,
confuse people. Let's confuse the new arrivals.
yeah.
And
If you had to eat it off any of the curbs at Monza, which corner would you choose? That's
if you had
part
to
of it.
eat a pizza off the nose of any car in the WEC paddock, which one would it be? My vote is going for the Inter Europol competition car because I think that'd be quite fun. No, one of the Ligiers because it's got a bit of a scoop, isn't it? It'd be quite.
Oh, that's good. That's practical. Also, the last race for that Ligier, so do it while you can.
Oh yeah, of course. ARC Bratislava ditching it for the Orica.
Yeah, I might go for the Glickenhaus, because hear me out here. Very steep nose, but quite a consistent gradient to it. So I feel like I could judge if the pizza was sliding. This is ridiculous.
Let's move
But
on.
let us know in the comments below, which pizza are you eating off which car? I can't believe those words coming out of my mouth.
And if someone
Are
does
we
do
committing
this,
to this? Are we
let's
committing
do
to
it.
this?
Let's do it. Look, let's test the people. We're testing you to see if you've made it this far. What flavour, style pizza, and what car are you going to eat it off? In the comments, go now. Just do it now before we start the final category. Done it? Good. Right. Okay. Final category. Hypercar. Look, we're in race 3, and I think we had the race we've been expecting to have from Hypercar this first season of the new rule set. I want to start off by saying, great to see the number 7 team winning. I think that's something they really need as a crew, especially in this new era. It proves that they can get it done. They didn't have it easy, did they? With Kamui Kobayashi stopping out on track. I'm going to give him to give him my driver of the day pick.
Well deserved.
Here's why. Siren Tim in post edit. Play the siren now if you can be bothered. If you can't, apologies for the editing quality, production quality of this podcast. But anyway, look, you've done 5 hours and 15 minutes odd of pretty intense racing as a team. You're covering off an attack from behind from now 2 cars in terms of the Alpine XLMP1 car and the Glickenhaus, which was very much up to speed, I feel like, this weekend. And to have a failure, a problem right in this final hour, and for Kobayashi to do everything right, I felt, pulled to the side of the track, stopped, switched the thing off, switched the thing back on again, wait. Cut to, he wasn't getting flustered. They didn't cut to an onboard of him throwing his hands up in the air. He wasn't shouting and screaming over the radio. Yes, he gave a pretty solid message saying something's gone wrong, cars cutting out, whatever. But there wasn't this extremely, overt reaction to it. And I think that is why I picked him for my driver of the day, to basically have a race ending issue occur, and he dealt with it to perfection. But let's talk more about the rest of the hypercar class, because for me, Glickenhaus, what a weekend for them. I mean, race 2 for them, 2 cars now as well on the grid. They were very much competitive.
Yeah, 100%. Before we do mention Glickenhaus in Monza, I will say I very much enjoyed the TRB Glickenhaus Goodwood video. Fantastic work on that, mate. I know I'm not alone in seeing some of the comments on that. So nice work, and let's see more of you in front of endurance racing cars on camera, please, in the
Thank
future.
you.
But yeah, fantastic weekend for Glickenhaus. I think probably surprised a lot of people, including ourselves. I know we went on a slight rant in the Portimao podcast episode, because we kind of felt it was quite disappointing for the amount of hype that there'd been around that car. But we also did include the caveat that we know the car's designed for Le Mans, right? We know that. We know Monza's a way more telling track of what your car might be like at Le Mans compared to somewhere like Portimao. And we also know that they've tested at Monza pre-season. So we knew they were going to be stronger, but that much stronger. I'm very, very impressed with that. And I think they did exactly what they needed to do. I don't think anyone except Toyota is expecting to put, well, apart from Alpine at Portimao, obviously, because they did have the overall pace. But in terms of being able to win, unless the Toyotas have issues, I don't think Alpine and Glickenhaus are killing themselves saying we're going to rock up and take pole and run away with it. They know that's not realistic at the minute. So what they've got to do is put the pressure on Toyota whichever way they can, force an issue, or just be there to capitalize when they do have then they do run into troubles. That's exactly what they were able to do. Both the Alpine and Glickenhaus were able to capitalise off Toyota's mechanical woes this weekend. And heading into Le Mans with an unproven so far at Le Mans new hypercar from Toyota, and yes, the Glickenhauses as well. And yes, there's only one of the Alpines, so we could well just be looking at a P2 coming and capitalising on those if all the cars have issues. But yeah, I was massively impressed with that. I think I saw that the 709 was only 0.4 of a second off in terms of average race pace, and still able to do the 30 lap stints that Toyota was doing in the race. If you told us that after Portimao,
Yeah.
we would have been like, "Where are you getting your stats from, mate?" Because that is that the same car?
And
Fantastic from them.
to just add an asterisk to that point, that's not because you and I are downtreading Glickenhaus or we don't think they're worthy. It's because we think they've got a plenty of potential that we felt maybe wasn't. Obviously, we'd like to see them reach that, but we feel like there was something stopping them or a couple of things that was potentially a barrier to that potential being unlocked. I feel like the two cars made a difference as well. I feel like they just had more strings in their bow, notes on the piano, whatever phrases you want to throw at it, tools in the box,
Pizzas on the nose.
pieces on the nose. Uh, but that car was quick. The 007 was quick this weekend, proven by the fact that they got the fastest sectors in sectors 1 and 2, beating the Toyotas. And look, could they have won the race if they didn't have to do that late race brake change? Probably. I don't think the Toyota would have been able to catch them. And if the issue for the Toyota compounded and continued, I mean, we weren't that far off seeing Glickenhaus win overall or get second place in only their second race in the championship. I mean, it is really a strong showing. Look, if this trend of form continues, this upward trend, I mean, we're in for a stellar Le Mans. And I think, like you say, yes, okay, they might not be setting the pace, but if they're not too far off, if their loss of time to Toyota is minimal, that really puts the pressure on Toyota to stamp these problems out. And Kamui Kobayashi was quite public in saying post race, got a lot of work to do to win Le Mans this year for Toyota. Um, and I feel like this is something else I wanted to discuss. We've mentioned before this, not hate, but potentially distasteful or downtreading comments that Toyota get. Follows of similar ilk to Mercedes doing well in F1. Racing's boring. They always dominate. I hope they have problems, kind of thing. Toyota's built this new car and are running it flat out. Like they are racing. They are pushing absolutely everything. And I think this uh, narrative of we need Toyota to do badly and we need them to not, we need them to have problems to create a good race is not the attitude we should have. And I know that I've been guilty of that potentially in the last few years where they've been out and out the fastest P1. And the only way we're ever going to get a race is if something goes wrong for them. But I feel like in this new era, we should be hoping that actually they have a good race. And more importantly, Glickenhaus and Alpine have a great race because they are not too far off each other. Let's be honest. I do feel like we're set for a really good race at Le Mans. We had it here at Monza. We had all three brands. Okay, albeit one's a slightly different car. It's not quite hypercar, is it? But they're all there. They weren't too far off each other. It wasn't like someone was 6 laps down after an hour. They were all fairly closely matched. And across the race, we saw the usual, traffic giving and taking away pace. We saw, driver changes, someone getting in and being quicker and closing a gap. we saw basically this hypercar category giving us the race we've wanted for a little while now, and really the race that this class is hopefully going to start giving us. Downside to that is we did have the problems, and you could argue that that was what really provided the excitement and maybe gave it a bit more competitive spirit, a competitive nature than that we would have had. Would Toyota have just 1-2'd it potentially? But I feel like they would have been harried the whole way. But yeah, your comments have on Toyota. You know, they are having problems. There is a new car. It's a brand new car. I think we're finally seeing the teething issues that we expect, the new car problems that we so often talk about. Yes, we saw them a little bit at Spa with the number 7 car having the big lockups. And again at Monza, we saw it with the number 8 having the huge lockups and Brendan Hartley nearly taking out the 98 Aston Martin, just skipping across at the first chicane. But Toyota are really digging deep, and I don't think wishing bad upon them is the way we should be. You know, the general consensus should be heading into Le Mans.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We definitely had a section of the podcast last time where it was a sort of 5 minutes or 10 minutes of appreciation for Toyota, because they do deserve it. They've completely propped up the dying days of LMP1, and they've gone full commitment to this new era, and they're locked into this new era now because they've been fully committed to it straight away. So yeah, props to Toyota as always. They will be slightly concerned, and like you said, they are concerned going into Le Mans. They know they've got work to do, but we know. I think Pascal Vaston said it's completely natural. It'd be weird if a racing team wasn't concerned or wanting to sort things going into the biggest race of the year. They're not the only ones who've got, let's say, issues. In some cases, fundamental design issues. In the case of the Alpine, I don't know how on earth they're going to fare at Le Mans. They're just going to have to hope for a reliable run, I think, because we've seen them now go for out and out pace at Spa and Portimao, able to push Toyota and challenge them on track, but unable to strategically be able to keep up because of the fuel deficit. Then we've seen them at Monza lifting and coasting like there's no tomorrow. Obviously had a bit of a power issue at the start of the race as well, which allowed the 709 Glickenhaus to close up quite significantly. But in general, that was their strategy, to lift and coast a lot more, try and save fuel and be closer at least. And they were. I think we've seen gaps of sort of 7 and 8 laps, shorter stints from Alpine. I think it was only 3 or 4 that we saw at Monza. So to an extent, yes, they closed that gap, but it did mean that there wasn't that pace pressure on Toyota that we've seen in the first 2 races of this season. But yeah, my point is, Toyota aren't the only ones who've got issues to sort. Yes, it was a massively encouraging weekend for Glickenhaus, but unfortunately the 708 race was plagued by problems right from the very start. Saw Durrani dropping back in that car, and also, of course, we potentially the 709 would have won if it wasn't for that the brake wear issue, which was a lot higher than what they were expecting. I mean, the fact that they were in a position to capitalize on Toyota and lead for what, albeit a sector, because it was on an in-lap that
Well,
they did lead.
is
But
actually it's actually charted on the official lap charts. They led 2 laps, so it's
okay,
even better than just the sector that I think I certainly thought it was just the final sector of the lap,
yeah,
but
yeah, same. I thought that he got past Kobayashi because Kobayashi stopped on the run down to Ascari. I thought the Glickenhaus was on an in-lap at that point. But
could
yeah,
be
if
wrong. But
they've got it charted down. I won't argue with it.
the alchemelsystems.com lap chart, car number 709, albeit under full course yellow, I believe,
Mhm.
led laps 137 and 138. But
Wow.
for them to lead,
The point is, they led after Portimao. If we'd said that, and that late into the race as well, to the point where if they didn't have the issue, they could quite feasibly have
but
won it. But we know that having brake issues going into Le Mans, a track where you need a lot of stopping power and you need brake durability, Glickenhaus have got problems to solve there. They need to get the second car, if you like, the 708. They need to get on top of the reliabilities that hampered them, and they need to get on top of the brakes. They solved the tyre issues they had from Portimao. Yes, Monza's a lot less abrasive, but this is the nature of having a new set of regulations. Each car is different. Each team is a different way of working through the problems, and they're getting different problems thrown at them. So each team, I think, has quite considerable work to do heading into Le Mans, which is exciting.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this kind of pre-Le Mans race is all about, isn't it? We see it at Spa and races, seasons gone past, with cars showing up to be tested and raced at Spa before then going to Le Mans. But throw this in. Okay, the number 7 car stopped with an issue. It fundamentally had a technical issue, a mechanical issue. It had to stop, recycle the car. I think it was actually an electrical issue. But say they just had to pit to change a tire with a puncture. Oh, maybe like the number 7 car had to do in Le Mans 2019, where they had that sensor issue in the wrong tire, and then Jose Maria Lopez had to pit twice in the final hour. That cost them the same amount of time as the problem that the number 7 car had at Monza this weekend. It might not be an issue, like we say, a mechanical issue. It might not be a failure that brings someone else into contention. It could just be a usual Le Mans giveth and taketh away, not over till the fat lady sings, Le Mans chooses its winner, all that kind of stuff. That could be what hands Glickenhaus a win. And like we're saying, off the back of this race, if they're able to do what they did at Monza, be quick, be very much consistent and on the pace, like you say, average lap time, bang on. Drivers look to be in fine form as well. Particularly Romain Dumas, who I feel like you're going to interject here. There was a wry smile across the face of Haff. Dumas, again, great drive from him. I feel like I feel like he's about to receive your driver of the weekend.
He is indeed. Insert the alarm siren here.
I've got to
Ding
do it
ding
so many
ding.
times.
Yeah, I thought it was a great performance from him. To be expected. I mean, Glickenhaus have a very strong driver lineup. I mean, it's almost strong driver lineups becoming a cliche that we say across the WEC and IMSA podcast, isn't it? Because there's so many of them. But I really do think Glickenhaus have very, very strong lineups. Dumas is obviously quality, just a world-class driver with absolute buckets of experience, and he was using that experience. I don't think the Glickenhaus was. It looked transformed, didn't it? From what we saw, where it was qualifying at Portimao and the car was dancing around all over the place. The rear end was not gripping. It looked a proper handful. And then at the start of the race, it was running wide and in amongst the P2s and the GTs. It just looks so much more settled this weekend. And that's when drivers like Dumas can be like, okay, we're not just playing survival here. I know we can push this now. And in the 4th hour of the race, he was the fastest car on track for a good period of time. So that's not. I know we said yes, the race came alive because of Toyota's issues, but Glickenhaus were the fastest car on track at that point in time on merit.
To round off your point, the race was already alive. The race hadn't stopped.
It
The race
always
wasn't
is.
over.
It always is in endurance racing. This is the thing. I think we've become so spoilt in the last decade, and especially in the last 5 years or so, I'd say, because of not just in GTs, but the wheel-to-wheel battles that we saw in the peak LMP1 hybrid era, closely then followed by when that started to demise, we had Audi pull out and Porsche pull out. We were completely transfixed on GTE. And then sort of LMP1 became this old school race of, are they going to have an issue? Who can capitalize? It's kind of the old school endurance style of racing. But that's just because we're not having wheel-to-wheel battles doesn't make it a bad race in endurance racing, in my opinion. There's always a jeopardy there. Something could go wrong. Like you say, it doesn't have to be a car issue. It could be an issue in traffic. It could be a puncture. It could be anything that happens. And like we've seen at Claxon here for mentioning probably the most normie example of Le Mans racing we can. But 2016, it's not over till it's over. You have to make the checkered flag. And especially if you're a Toyota fan, you know the feeling all too well of I'm not going to get comfortable with this car leading because anything can happen. And that I don't uh, subscribe to the we need wheel to wheel racing to have great endurance racing. We're just very, very lucky that 9 times out of 10 we do.
Yeah, completely agree. I very much agree. I almost don't have anything to follow on from that point. I think, yeah,
Wow.
that you're right. Look, endurance racing is about building the car that's going to win across the length of the race. I mean, feel free. That feel like that's another in-lap out of context tweet there. Great job, Tim, just summing up endurance racing. But look, there's plenty that can go wrong. Traffic, like you say, with the hypercar being slower now compared to the LMP1, traffic is more of an obstacle to the drivers. More chance something could happen there. We are starting to see this class, I think, find its feet. And I think a lot of that is coming through Glickenhaus's presence and emerging presence now. So I'd like to give them at my siren uh, team of the weekend. Feel like they handled the problem with the 708 pretty well. Shame that that was terminal, and the way they almost faultlessly run the 709 all weekend was really good. Great to see the whole team take a step in the right direction. Um, Wanted to add on to this conversation about hypercar the stratification, the difference between the two classes, as we've come to learn its name, its title from the ACO and FIA and WEC and whoever else wants to be involved. But I feel like we are going to be okay at Le Mans in terms of actual pace difference. I feel like there will be a noticeable difference between the two classes. It's not going to be massive, I wouldn't say, but I felt like at Monza we could see a definite difference in pace. Whereas at Spa, it took. I mean, the United Autosports car was basically in the way of the Alpine for the whole first couple of hours, and then even at Portimao, we had penalties for cars that were ignoring blue flags. They weren't really ignoring them; they were just quick enough to be in front still. I think the Toyota took 6 laps in practice to pass one of the LMP2 cars because it was just quick across the lap in comparison. Monza, I felt like we finally saw a difference, and it wasn't outrageously large, but it was enough to be able, say that was the first race I'd seen, I'd be able to differentiate between the two classes. Um, and I think that's bodes well for Le Mans. I think maybe we're starting to find the teams are finding speed with their hypercars as well. Like we said, wasn't all going to come through bot, but it might come through just those teams getting better at setting up the cars and finding the speed and finding the performance. And if at Monza a track that is fairly similar in terms of characteristics to Le Mans, hopefully we're going to see some a nice, a more expectable margin between the two of them.
Yeah, I agree. I did expect it to be closer, considering what we'd seen at Spa, where you can get away with sacrificing Sector 2 and generating lap time and race pace from running low downforce, and then obviously seeing more of a gap at Portimao, but still pretty close from what we're used to seeing like in previous seasons, still very close in the grand scheme of things. And that still applies to Monza, but I was definitely expecting it to swing back into they're running the lowest aero they can, and we're at Monza, so they they shouldn't be suffering too much with it there. Um, but also naturally, we will see the hypercars progressing as well. Um, so I think it's in a that's in a nice place. We know the um, the 708 Glickenhaus was dropping back into the clutches of Phil Hansen a bit when it had the issue, but we didn't really see what we saw at Spa and to an extent at Portimao, where the classes were mixing and it was causing a bit of an on-track issue. So that's a happy medium I think, has been found in the race before Le Mans, which is good timing.
Fantastic timing, isn't it? It's good to see, and I think, yeah, like we both kind of alluded to, this hypercar class now is beginning to gather momentum and find its feet, and I just look forward to what is to come now. Obviously, between Portimao podcast and this podcast, we've had the Peugeot 9X8 being revealed. We've had the talk of IMSA and WEC convergence. Look, let's be honest, we're in for a good time. if all is said, all that is said is eventually done. If to put a play on the phrase. So that concludes the hypercar class. I feel like we have well and truly rattled through the 4 categories in wet racing. Again, look, but my final point would be from this race is, please, WEC, please, can we go back to Monza? Please. I feel like it's such a perfect fit for the WEC. I would be quite happy with it in this position as a pre-Le Mans race. I feel like it fits quite well. I feel like it's quite a good time to go to Monza. Quite a good testing kind of opportunity. I do understand that obviously we're hoping in 2022 that Le Mans moves back to its usual June date, but I haven't got a problem with a May race in Monza.
Yeah, exactly. A May Day away day race for Porsche, like you said earlier. You know how you're like,
I'm just
it's
leaving
late,
you.
all right.
I'm not helping you. I'm just going to
No,
leave
you're not
you on
helping
this
me.
one.
Well, I'm going to drop you in it because you said the gap between the P2s and the hypercar was not outrageously large, but enough, which is another out of context TRB. TRB quote. So if you drop me in it, I've got ammunition to drop you right back in it.
Really,
sunshine.
I'm really worried that someone who's good at stats and good at like history or keeping track of something, someone like a WEC data kind of Twitter page is going to come back to haunt us by quoting us on this kind of stuff. I mean, say us, me, basically. I'm the one in the firing line here. But yes,
I'm distancing myself from it, mate. Sorry.
Point remains, Monza, please, let's have it back. Bigger calendar. Let's keep Monza in there as well.
Yes, and these are the kind of tracks that WEC should be racing at. Tracks with history, tracks with character.
Yeah.
And also, the gap between Portimao and Monza was a nice amount of time. I didn't feel like, I desperately need a WEC race, but I was also like, this is a good gap between races, which is rare for that calendar to have that. I know in the second half of the year we're not going to feel that way. So when I woke up Monday morning and was like, oh yeah, it's Monza this weekend, like that's come around quite quickly. I thought, like, that's a nice thing to think as a WEC fan. So yes, let's have less gaps between races, more races on the calendar, and more races at circuits with character.
Yeah.
So ideally, before Le Mans, what we want basically is at least a Silverstone, at least a Spa, and at least a Monza going forward. Universe, if you're listening, WEC, if you're listening, thank you very much. Signing off.
If he had a mic, he would have just dropped it. I'd like to say he's wearing a headset, but if he had, he's thrown. Did you hear that? That was his headset being launched across.
Broke my headset. But it's worth it. It's worth it for a better WEC calendar. Sacrifices I make.
Very much the case. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you very much for listening. If you made it this far, again, thank you so much for your support of this podcast, for getting involved. I do get messages from followers saying they've listened in, they enjoyed the episode, they've had it on whilst they've been working, studying, whatever. It's great to feel like you guys are accompanying us through this season and you're listening in and you're joining in this chat. So, do feel free to reach out, do feel free to comment, DM, whatever, and just be part of this conversation, because it is, as much as it's Haff and I sat here chatting about these races that we watch, you guys are very much involved in this, and, we love hearing what you guys have to think. But Haff.
And what pizza you want to eat off of which racing car.
Brilliant.
That's the crucial point here.
Right, that's the last thing you're going to say in the podcast. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on episode 6 of the TRB In-Lap podcast, 6 hours of Monza. I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Thank you very much for joining us on the TRB In-Lap podcast, presented by Racing Edge.